When evening came, he was reclining at the table with the 12 disciples. While they were eating, he said,
"Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me."
Being very much grieved at this, each and every one began to say to him, "Lord, it is not I, is it?" In reply he said,
"The one who dips his hand with me into the bowl is the one who will betray me. True, the Son of Man is going away, just as it is written about him. But woe to that man through whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born."
Judas, who was about to betray him, replied,
"It is not I, is it, Rabbi?"
Jesus said to him,
"You yourself said it."
As they continued eating, Jesus took a loaf, and after saying a blessing, he broke it, and giving it to the disciples, he said,
"Take, eat. This means my body."
And taking a cup, he offered thanks, and gave it to them, saying,
"Drink out of it, all of you, for this means my blood of the covenant, which is to be poured out in behalf of many for forgiveness of sins. But I say to you, I will by no means drink again any of this product of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in the kingdom of my Father."
Finally, after singing praises, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them,
"All of you will be stumbled in connection with me on this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered about. But after I have been raised up, I will go ahead of you into Galilee."
But Peter, in response, said to him,
"Although all the others are stumbled in connection with you, I will never be stumbled."
Jesus said to him,
"Truly I say to you, on this night, before a rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times."
Peter said to him,
"Even if I should have to die with you, I will by no means disown you."
All the other disciples also said the same thing.
After evening had fallen, he came with the 12. And as they were reclining at the table and eating, Jesus said,
"Truly I say to you, one of you who is eating with me will betray me."
They began to be grieved, and to say to him one by one,
"It is not I, is it?"
He said to them,
"It is one of the 12, the one dipping with me into the bowl. For the Son of Man is going away, just as it is written about him. But woe to that man through whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born."
And as they continued eating, he took a loaf, said a blessing, broke it, and gave it to them, saying,
"Take it. This means my body."
And taking a cup, he offered thanks and gave it to them, and they all drank out of it. And he said to them,
"This means my blood of the covenant, which is to be poured out in behalf of many. Truly I say to you, I will by no means drink any more of the product of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God."
Finally, after singing praises, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them,
"You will all be stumbled, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered about. But after I have been raised up, I will go ahead of you into Galilee."
But Peter said to him,
"Even if all the others are stumbled, I will not be."
At that Jesus said to him,
Truly I say to you that today, yes, on this very night, before a rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times.
But he kept insisting,
If I have to die with you, I will by no means disown you.
Also, all the others began to say the same thing.
So when the hour came, he reclined at the table along with the apostles, and he said to them,
I have greatly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God.
And accepting a cup, he gave thanks and said,
Take this, and pass it from one to the other among yourselves. For I tell you, from now on I will not drink again from the product of the vine until the kingdom of God comes.
Also, he took a loaf, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to them, saying,
This means my body, which is to be given in your behalf. Keep doing this in remembrance of me.
Also, he did the same with the cup, after they had the evening meal, saying,
This cup means the new covenant by virtue of my blood, which is to be poured out in your behalf. But look, the hand of my betrayer is with me at the table. For indeed, the Son of Man is going his way according to what has been determined. All the same, woe to that man through whom he is betrayed.
So they began to discuss among themselves which one of them could really be about to do this. However, there also arose a heated dispute among them over which one of them was considered to be the greatest. But he said to them,
The kings of the nations lord it over them, and those having authority over them are called benefactors. You, though, are not to be that way, but let the one who is the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the one taking the lead as the one ministering. For which one is greater, the one dining or the one serving? Is it not the one dining? But I am among you as the one serving. However, you are the ones who have stuck with me in my trials, and I make a covenant with you, just as my Father has made a covenant with me for a kingdom, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, look, Satan has demanded to have all of you to sift you as wheat. But I have made supplication for you, that your faith may not give out, and you, once you have returned, strengthen your brothers.
Then he said to him,
Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death.
But he said,
I tell you, Peter, a rooster will not crow today until you have denied knowing me 3 times.
He also said to them,
When I sent you out without a money bag and a food pouch and sandals, you did not lack anything, did you?
They said,
No.
Then he said to them,
But now let the one who has a money bag take it, likewise a food pouch, and let the one who has no sword sell his outer garment and buy one. For I tell you that what is written must be accomplished in me, namely, he was counted with lawless ones. For this is being fulfilled concerning me.
Then they said,
Lord, look, here are 2 swords.
He said to them,
It is enough.
Now because he knew before the festival of the Passover that his hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father, Jesus, having loved his own who were in the world, loved them to the end. The evening meal was going on, and the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him. So Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he came from God and was going to God, got up from the evening meal and laid aside his outer garments. And taking a towel, he wrapped it around his waist. After that he put water into a basin, and started to wash the feet of the disciples, and to dry them off with the towel that was wrapped around him. Then he came to Simon Peter. He said to him,
Lord, are you washing my feet?
Jesus answered him,
What I am doing you do not understand now, but you will understand after these things.
Peter said to him,
You will certainly never wash my feet.
Jesus answered him,
Unless I wash you, you have no share with me.
Simon Peter said to him,
Lord, wash not only my feet, but also my hands and my head.
Jesus said to him,
Whoever has bathed does not need to have more than his feet washed, but is completely clean. And you men are clean, but not all of you.
For he knew the man who was betraying him. This is why he said, Not all of you are clean. When now he had washed their feet, and had put his outer garments on, he again reclined at the table and said to them,
Do you understand what I have done to you? You address me as teacher and Lord, and you are correct, for I am such. Therefore, if I, the Lord and teacher, washed your feet, you also should wash the feet of one another. For I set the pattern for you, that just as I did to you, you should also do. Most truly I say to you, a slave is not greater than his master, nor is one who is sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, happy you are if you do them. I am not talking about all of you. I know the ones I have chosen. But this was so that the scripture might be fulfilled. The one who was eating my bread has lifted his heel against me. From this moment on, I am telling you before it occurs, so that when it does occur, you may believe that I am he. Most truly I say to you, whoever receives anyone I send receives me also, and whoever receives me receives also the one who sent me.
After saying these things, Jesus became troubled in spirit, and he bore witness, saying,
Most truly I say to you, one of you will betray me.
The disciples began to look at one another, being at a loss as to which one he was talking about. One of the disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining close to Jesus. Therefore Simon Peter nodded to this one and said to him,
Tell us whom he is talking about.
So the latter leaned back on the chest of Jesus and said to him,
Lord, who is it?
Jesus answered,
It is the one to whom I will give the piece of bread that I dip.
So after dipping the bread, he took it and gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. After Judas took the piece of bread, then Satan entered into him. So Jesus said to him,
What you are doing, do it more quickly.
However, none of those reclining at the table knew why he said this to him. Some, in fact, were thinking that since Judas was holding the money box, Jesus was telling him, Buy what we need for the festival, or that he should give something to the poor. So after he received the piece of bread, he went out immediately, and it was night. When therefore he had gone out, Jesus said,
Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in connection with him. God himself will glorify him, and he will glorify him immediately. Little children, I am with you a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I said to the Jews, 'Where I go, you cannot come,' I now say it also to you. I am giving you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love among yourselves."
Simon Peter said to him,
Lord, where are you going?
Jesus answered,
"Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow later."
Peter said to him,
Lord, why is it I cannot follow you now? I will surrender my life in your behalf.
Jesus answered,
"Will you surrender your life in my behalf? Most truly I say to you, a rooster will by no means crow until you have disowned me 3 times. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Exercise faith in God. Exercise faith also in me. In the house of my Father are many dwelling places. Otherwise, I would have told you, for I am going my way to prepare a place for you. Also, if I go my way and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will receive you home to myself, so that where I am, you also may be. And where I am going, you know the way."
Thomas said to him,
Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?
Jesus said to him,
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you men had known me, you would have known my Father also. From this moment on, you know him and have seen him.
Philip said to him,
Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us.
Jesus said to him,
Even after I have been with you men for such a long time, Philip, have you not come to know me? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father also. How is it you say, "Show us the Father"? Do you not believe that I am in union with the Father, and the Father is in union with me? The things I say to you, I do not speak of my own originality, but the Father who remains in union with me is doing his works. Believe me that I am in union with the Father, and the Father is in union with me. Otherwise, believe because of the works themselves. Most truly I say to you, whoever exercises faith in me will also do the works that I do, and he will do works greater than these, because I am going my way to the Father. Also, whatever you ask in my name, I will do this, so that the Father may be glorified in connection with the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. If you love me, you will observe my commandments. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper to be with you forever, the Spirit of the truth, which the world cannot receive, because it neither sees it nor knows it. You know it, because it remains with you and is in you. I will not leave you bereaved. I am coming to you. In a little while, the world will see me no more, but you will see me, because I live and you will live. In that day, you will know that I am in union with my Father, and you are in union with me, and I am in union with you. Whoever has my commandments and observes them is the one who loves me. In turn, whoever loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and will clearly show myself to him.
Judas, not Iscariot, said to him,
Lord, what has happened that you intend to show yourself clearly to us and not to the world?
In answer, Jesus said to him,
If anyone loves me, he will observe my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our dwelling with him. Whoever does not love me does not observe my words. The word that you are hearing is not mine, but belongs to the Father who sent me. I have spoken these things to you while I am still with you. But the Helper, the Holy Spirit, which the Father will send in my name, that one will teach you all things, and bring back to your minds all the things I told you. I leave you peace. I give you my peace. I do not give it to you the way that the world gives it. Do not let your hearts be troubled, nor let them shrink out of fear. You heard that I said to you, I am going away, and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I am. So now I have told you before it occurs, so that you may believe when it does occur. I will not speak with you much more, for the ruler of the world is coming, and he has no hold on me. But for the world to know that I love the Father, I am doing just as the Father has commanded me to do. Get up. Let us go from here. I am the true vine, and my Father is the cultivator. He takes away every branch in me not bearing fruit, and he cleans every one bearing fruit, so that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Remain in union with me, and I will remain in union with you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it remains in the vine, neither can you unless you remain in union with me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in union with me, and I in union with him, this one bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing at all. If anyone does not remain in union with me, he is thrown out like a branch and dries up. And men gather those branches and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you remain in union with me, and my sayings remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will take place for you. My Father is glorified in this, that you keep bearing much fruit, and prove yourselves my disciples. Just as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Remain in my love. If you observe my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have observed the commandments of the Father and remain in his love. These things I have spoken to you, so that my joy may be in you, and your joy may be made full. This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. No one has love greater than this, that someone should surrender his life in behalf of his friends. You are my friends if you do what I am commanding you. I no longer call you slaves, because a slave does not know what his master does. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you all the things I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go and keep bearing fruit, and that your fruit should remain, so that no matter what you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, that you love one another. If the world hates you, you know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were part of the world would be fond of what is its own. Now because you are no part of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, for this reason the world hates you. Keep in mind the word I said to you. A slave is not greater than his master. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have observed my word, they will also observe yours. But they will do all these things against you on account of my name, because they do not know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would have no sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me also hates my Father. If I had not done among them the works that no one else did, they would have no sin. But now they have both seen me and hated me as well as my Father. But this happened in order to fulfill the word written in their law. They hated me without cause. When the Helper comes that I will send you from the Father, the Spirit of the truth, which comes from the Father, that one will bear witness about me, and you, in turn, are to bear witness, because you have been with me from the beginning. I have said these things to you so that you may not be stumbled. Men will expel you from the synagogue. In fact, the hour is coming when everyone who kills you will think he has offered a sacred service to God. But they will do these things because they have not come to know either the Father or me. Nevertheless, I have told you these things so that when the hour for them to happen arrives, you will remember that I told them to you. I did not tell you these things at first, because I was with you. But now I am going to the one who sent me. Yet not one of you asks me, "Where are you going?" But because I have told you these things, grief has filled your hearts. Nevertheless, I am telling you the truth. It is for your benefit that I am going away. For if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you. But if I do go, I will send him to you. And when that one comes, he will give the world convincing evidence concerning sin and concerning righteousness and concerning judgment. First concerning sin, because they are not exercising faith in me. Then concerning righteousness, because I am going to the Father, and you will see me no longer. Then concerning judgment, because the ruler of this world has been judged. I still have many things to say to you, but you are not able to bear them now. However, when that one comes, the Spirit of the truth, he will guide you into all the truth, for he will not speak of his own initiative, but what he hears, he will speak, and he will declare to you the things to come. That one will glorify me, because he will receive from what is mine, and will declare it to you. All the things that the Father has are mine. That is why I said he receives from what is mine and declares it to you. In a little while you will see me no longer, and again in a little while you will see me.
At that, some of his disciples said to one another,
What does he mean by saying to us, "In a little while you will not see me," and again, "In a little while you will see me," and "Because I am going to the Father"?
So they were saying,
What does he mean by saying, "a little while"? We do not know what he is talking about.
Jesus knew they wanted to question him, so he said to them,
Are you asking one another this because I said, "In a little while you will not see me," and again, "In a little while you will see me"? Most truly I say to you, you will weep and wail, but the world will rejoice. You will be grieved, but your grief will be turned into joy. When a woman is giving birth, she has grief because her hour has come. But when she has given birth to the child, she remembers the tribulation no more because of the joy that a man has been born into the world. So you also, now you have grief, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. In that day you will ask me no question at all. Most truly I say to you, if you ask the Father for anything, he will give it to you in my name. Until now you have not asked for a single thing in my name. Ask, and you will receive, so that your joy may be complete. I have spoken these things to you in comparisons. The hour is coming when I will no longer speak to you in comparisons, but I will tell you plainly about the Father. In that day you will make request of the Father in my name. In saying this, I do not mean that I will make request for you, for the Father himself has affection for you, because you have had affection for me, and have believed that I came as God's representative. I came as the Father's representative and have come into the world. Now I am leaving the world and am going to the Father.
His disciples said,
See, now you are speaking plainly and are not using comparisons. Now we know that you know all things, and you do not need to have anyone question you. By this we believe that you came from God.
Jesus answered them,
Do you believe now? Look, the hour is coming. Indeed, it has come, when each one of you will be scattered to his own house, and you will leave me alone. But I am not alone, because the Father is with me. I have said these things to you so that by means of me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take courage. I have conquered the world.
Jesus spoke these things, and raising his eyes to heaven, he said,
Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, so that your Son may glorify you, just as you have given him authority over all flesh, so that he may give everlasting life to all those whom you have given to him. This means everlasting life, their coming to know you, the only true God, and the one whom you sent, Jesus Christ. I have glorified you on the earth, having finished the work you have given me to do. So now, Father, glorify me at your side, with the glory that I had alongside you before the world was. I have made your name manifest to the men whom you gave me out of the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have observed your word. Now they have come to know that all the things you gave me are from you, because I have given them the sayings that you gave me, and they have accepted them, and have certainly come to know that I came as your representative, and they have believed that you sent me. I make request concerning them. I make request not concerning the world, but concerning those whom you have given me, because they are yours. And all my things are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been glorified among them. I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, watch over them on account of your own name, which you have given me, so that they may be one, just as we are one. When I was with them, I used to watch over them on account of your own name, which you have given me, and I have protected them, and not one of them is destroyed, except the son of destruction, so that the scripture might be fulfilled. But now I am coming to you, and I am saying these things in the world, so that they may have my joy made complete in themselves. I have given your word to them, but the world has hated them, because they are no part of the world, just as I am no part of the world. I do not request that you take them out of the world, but that you watch over them because of the wicked one. They are no part of the world, just as I am no part of the world. Sanctify them by means of the truth. Your word is truth. Just as you sent me into the world, I also sent them into the world. And I am sanctifying myself in their behalf, so that they also may be sanctified by means of truth. I make request not concerning these only, but also concerning those putting faith in me through their word, so that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in union with me, and I am in union with you, that they also may be in union with us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. I have given them the glory that you have given me, in order that they may be one, just as we are one. I in union with them, and you in union with me, in order that they may be perfected into one, so that the world may know that you sent me, and that you loved them just as you loved me. Father, I want those whom you have given me to be with me where I am, in order that they may look upon my glory that you have given me, because you loved me before the founding of the world. Righteous Father, the world has indeed not come to know you, but I know you, and these have come to know that you sent me. I have made your name known to them, and will make it known, so that the love with which you loved me may be in them, and I in union with them.
Then Jesus came with them to the spot called Gethsemane, and he said to the disciples,
Sit down here, while I go over there and pray.
And taking along Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to feel grieved and to be greatly troubled. Then he said to them,
I am deeply grieved, even to death. Stay here and keep on the watch with me.
And going a little way forward, he fell face down, praying,
My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass away from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will.
He returned to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter,
Could you not so much as keep on the watch for 1 hour with me? Keep on the watch and pray continually, so that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit, of course, is eager, but the flesh is weak.
Again, a second time, he went off and prayed,
My Father, if it is not possible for this to pass away unless I drink it, let your will take place.
And he came again and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them, he again went off and prayed for a third time, saying once more the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them,
At such a time as this, you are sleeping and resting. Look, the hour has drawn near for the Son of Man to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. Let us go. Look, my betrayer has drawn near.
While he was still speaking, look, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a large crowd with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now his betrayer had given them a sign, saying,
Whoever it is I kiss, he is the one. Take him into custody.
And going straight up to Jesus, he said,
Greetings, Rabbi,
and gave him a tender kiss. But Jesus said to him,
Fellow, for what purpose are you present?
Then they came forward and seized Jesus, and took him into custody. But look, one of those with Jesus reached out his hand and drew his sword, and struck the slave of the high priest, taking off his ear. Then Jesus said to him,
Return your sword to its place, for all those who take up the sword will perish by the sword. Or do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father to supply me at this moment more than 12 legions of angels? In that case, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must take place this way?
In that hour, Jesus said to the crowds,
Did you come out to arrest me with swords and clubs as against a robber? Day after day I used to sit in the temple teaching, and yet you did not take me into custody. But all of this has taken place for the writings of the prophets to be fulfilled.
Then all the disciples abandoned him and fled. Those who took Jesus into custody led him away to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were gathered together. But Peter kept following him from a good distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and after going inside, he sat with the house attendants to see the outcome. Now the chief priests and the entire Sanhedrin were looking for false testimony against Jesus, in order to put him to death. But they found none, although many false witnesses came forward. Later 2 came forward and said,
"This man said, 'I am able to throw down the temple of God and build it up in 3 days.'"
With that the high priest stood up and said to him,
"Do you say nothing in reply? What is it these men are testifying against you?"
But Jesus kept silent. So the high priest said to him,
"I put you under oath by the living God to tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God."
Jesus said to him,
"You yourself said it. But I say to you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven."
Then the high priest ripped his outer garments, saying,
"He has blasphemed. What further need do we have of witnesses? See, now you have heard the blasphemy. What is your opinion?"
They answered,
"He deserves to die."
Then they spat in his face and hit him with their fists. Others slapped him on the face, saying,
Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who struck you?
Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said,
"You too were with Jesus the Galilean."
But he denied it before them all, saying,
I do not know what you are talking about.
When he went out to the gatehouse, another girl noticed him and said to those there,
"This man was with Jesus the Nazarene."
Again he denied it, with an oath,
I do not know the man.
After a little while, those standing around came up and said to Peter,
Certainly, you are also one of them, for in fact, your dialect gives you away.
Then he started to curse and swear,
I do not know the man.
And immediately a rooster crowed. And Peter called to mind what Jesus had said, namely, Before a rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly.
So they came to a spot named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples,
Sit down here while I pray.
And he took Peter and James and John along with him, and he began to feel deeply distressed and to be greatly troubled. He said to them,
I am deeply grieved, even to death. Stay here and keep on the watch.
And going a little way forward, he fell to the ground and began praying that, if it were possible, the hour might pass away from him. And he said,
Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want.
He returned and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter,
Simon, are you sleeping? Did you not have the strength to keep on the watch for 1 hour? Keep on the watch and pray continually, so that you do not come into temptation. The spirit, of course, is eager, but the flesh is weak.
And he went away again and prayed, saying the same thing. And he came again and found them sleeping, for their eyes were weighed down. so they did not know what to answer him. And he returned the third time and said to them,
At such a time as this, you are sleeping and resting. It is enough. The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us go. Look, my betrayer has drawn near.
And immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now his betrayer had given them an agreed sign, saying,
Whoever it is I kiss, he is the one. Take him into custody and lead him away under guard.
And he came straight up and approached him and said,
Rabbi,
and gave him a tender kiss. So they seized him and took him into custody. However, one of those standing by drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest, taking off his ear. But in response, Jesus said to them,
Did you come out to arrest me with swords and clubs, as against a robber? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and yet you did not take me into custody. Nevertheless, this is to fulfill the Scriptures.
And they all abandoned him and fled. However, a certain young man wearing only a fine linen garment over his naked body began to follow him nearby, and they tried to seize him. But he left his linen garment behind and got away naked. They now led Jesus away to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes assembled. But Peter, from a good distance, followed him as far as into the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting together with the house attendants and warming himself before a bright fire. Now the chief priests and the entire Sanhedrin were looking for testimony against Jesus in order to put him to death, but they were not finding any. Many indeed were giving false witness against him, but their testimonies were not in agreement. Also, certain ones were standing up and bearing false witness against him, saying,
We heard him say, I will throw down this temple that was made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands.
But even on these grounds, their testimony was not in agreement. Then the high priest stood up in their midst and questioned Jesus, saying,
Do you say nothing in reply? What is it these men are testifying against you?
But he kept silent and made no reply at all. Again the high priest began to question him and said to him,
Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?
Then Jesus said,
I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven.
At this the high priest ripped his garments and said,
What further need do we have of witnesses? You heard the blasphemy. What is your decision?
They all condemned him as deserving of death. And some started to spit on him and to cover his face and hit him with their fists and say to him,
Prophesy!
And slapping him in the face, the court attendants took him. Now while Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came. On seeing Peter warming himself, she looked straight at him and said,
You too were with the Nazarene, this Jesus.
But he denied it, saying,
Neither do I know him nor do I understand what you are talking about."
And he went outside to the entryway. There the servant girl saw him and again began to say to those standing by,
"This is one of them."
Again he was denying it. And after a little while, those standing by again began saying to Peter,
"Certainly, you are one of them, for you are, in fact, a Galilean."
But he started to curse and swear,
"I do not know this man of whom you speak."
Immediately, a rooster crowed a second time, and Peter recalled what Jesus had said to him, "Before a rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times." And he broke down and began to weep.
On leaving, he went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples also followed him. On arriving at the place, he said to them,
"Carry on prayer, so that you do not enter into temptation."
And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw away, and he bent his knees and began to pray, saying,
"Father, if you want to, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, let not my will, but yours take place."
Then an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. But he was in such agony that he kept praying more earnestly, and his sweat became as drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went to the disciples, he found them slumbering, exhausted from grief. He said to them,
"Why are you sleeping? Get up and keep praying, so that you do not enter into temptation."
While he was still speaking, look, a crowd, and the man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them, and he approached Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him,
"Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?"
When those around him saw what was going to happen, they said,
"Lord, should we strike with the sword?"
One of them even struck the slave of the high priest, taking off his right ear. But in reply, Jesus said,
"That is enough."
And he touched the ear and healed him. Jesus then said to the chief priests and captains of the temple and elders who had come there for him,
"Did you come out with swords and clubs as against a robber? While I was with you in the temple day after day, you did not lay your hands on me. But this is your hour and the authority of darkness."
Then they arrested him and led him off, and they brought him into the house of the high priest. But Peter was following at a distance. When they lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter was sitting among them. But a servant girl, seeing him sitting in the light of the fire, looked closely at him and said,
"This man was also with him."
But he denied it, saying,
"I do not know him, woman."
After a short time, another person saw him and said,
"You too are one of them."
But Peter said,
"Man, I am not."
And after about an hour had passed, another man began insisting strongly,
"Certainly, this man was also with him, for he is, in fact, a Galilean."
But Peter said,
"Man, I do not know what you are saying."
And instantly, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. At this the Lord turned and looked straight at Peter, and Peter recalled the statement of the Lord when he had said to him, "Before a rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. Now the men who held Jesus in custody began to mock him, hitting him. And after covering his face, they kept asking,
Prophesy. Who is it that struck you?
And they said many other blasphemous things against him.
After he said these things, Jesus went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to where there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, his betrayer, also knew the place, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas brought the detachment of soldiers and officers of the chief priests and of the Pharisees, and came there with torches and lamps and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all the things that were going to happen to him, stepped forward and said to them,
Whom are you looking for?
They answered him,
Jesus, the Nazarene.
He said to them,
I am he.
Now Judas, his betrayer, was also standing with them. However, when Jesus said to them, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. So he asked them again,
Whom are you looking for?
They said,
Jesus, the Nazarene.
Jesus answered,
I told you that I am he. So if you are looking for me, let these men go.
This was to fulfill what he had said, Of those whom you have given me, I have not lost a single one. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. The name of the slave was Malchus. Jesus, however, said to Peter,
Put the sword into its sheath. Should I not drink the cup that the Father has given me?
Then the soldiers and the military commander and the officers of the Jews seized Jesus and bound him. They led him first to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Caiaphas was, in fact, the one who had advised the Jews that it was to their benefit for one man to die in behalf of the people. Now Simon Peter, as well as another disciple, was following Jesus. That disciple was known to the high priest, and he went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter was standing outside at the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the doorkeeper, and brought Peter in. The servant girl, who was the doorkeeper, then said to Peter,
You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?
He said,
I am not.
Now the slaves and the officers were standing around a charcoal fire they had made, because it was cold, and they were warming themselves. Peter also was standing with them and warming himself. So the chief priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. Jesus answered him,
I have spoken to the world publicly. I always taught in a synagogue and in the temple, where all the Jews come together, and I said nothing in secret. Why do you question me? Question those who have heard what I told them. See, these know what I said.
After he said these things, one of the officers who was standing by gave Jesus a slap in the face and said,
Is that the way you answer the chief priest?
Jesus answered him,
If I said something wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said was right, why do you hit me?
Then Annas sent him away bound to Caiaphas the high priest. Now Simon Peter was standing there warming himself. Then they said to him,
You are not also one of his disciples, are you?
He denied it and said,
I am not.
One of the slaves of the high priest, who was a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, said,
I saw you in the garden with him.
Did I not?"
However, Peter denied it again, and immediately a rooster crowed.
When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people consulted together against Jesus to put him to death. After binding him, they let him off and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that Jesus had been condemned, felt remorse, and brought the 30 pieces of silver back to the chief priests and elders, saying,
"I sinned when I betrayed innocent blood."
They said,
"What is that to us? You must see to it."
So he threw the silver pieces into the temple and departed. Then he went off and hanged himself. But the chief priests took the silver pieces and said,
"It is not lawful to put them into the sacred treasury, because they are the price of blood."
After consulting together, they used the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore, that field has been called Field of Blood to this very day. Then what was spoken through Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. And they took the 30 silver pieces, the price that was set on the man, the one on whom a price was set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field, according to what Jehovah had commanded me. Jesus now stood before the governor, and the governor put the question to him,
"Are you the king of the Jews?"
Jesus replied,
"You yourself say it."
But while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he made no answer. Then Pilate said to him,
"Do you not hear how many things they are testifying against you?"
But he did not answer him, no, not a word, so that the governor was very surprised. Now from festival to festival, it was the custom of the governor to release a prisoner to the crowd, whomever they wanted. Just at that time, they were holding a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they were gathered together, Pilate said to them,
"Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, the so-called Christ?"
For Pilate was aware that out of envy they had handed him over. Moreover, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent a message to him, saying,
"Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I suffered a lot today in a dream because of him."
But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas, but to have Jesus put to death. In response, the governor said to them,
"Which of the two do you want me to release to you?"
They said,
"Barabbas."
Pilate said to them,
"What then should I do with Jesus, the so-called Christ?"
They all said,
"To the stake with him."
He said,
"Why? What bad thing did he do?"
Still they kept shouting out all the more,
"To the stake with him!"
Seeing that it did no good, but rather an uproar was arising, Pilate took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying,
"I am innocent of the blood of this man. You yourselves must see to it."
At that all the people said in answer,
"Let his blood come upon us and upon our children."
Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus whipped and handed him over to be executed on the stake. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's residence and gathered the whole body of troops together around him, and disrobing him, they draped him with a scarlet cloak, and they braided a crown out of thorns and put it on his head, and put a reed in his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying,
"Greetings, you King of the Jews."
And they spat on him and took the reed and began hitting him on his head. Finally, after they had mocked him, they stripped him of the cloak and put his outer garments on him and led him off to be nailed to the stake. As they were going out, they found a man of Cyrene named Simon. This man they compelled into service to carry his torture stake. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, that is, Skull Place, they gave him wine mixed with gall to drink. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had nailed him to the stake, they distributed his outer garments by casting lots, and they sat there keeping watch over him. They also posted above his head the charge against him, in writing, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 robbers were put on stakes alongside him, one on his right and one on his left. And those passing by spoke abusively of him, shaking their heads and saying,
"You who would throw down the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself.
If you are a son of God, come down off the torture stake."
In the same way also, the chief priests with the scribes and the elders began mocking him, saying,
"Others he saved, himself he cannot save.
He is King of Israel. Let him now come down off the torture stake, and we will believe in him."
He has put his trust in God. Let him now rescue him if he wants him. For he said, "I am God's son."
In the same way, even the robbers who were on stakes alongside him were reproaching him. From the 6th hour on, a darkness fell over all the land until the 9th hour. About the 9th hour, Jesus called out with a loud voice, saying,
Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani.
That is,
my God, why have you forsaken me?
At hearing this, some of those standing there began to say,
This man is calling Elijah.
And immediately one of them ran and took a sponge, and soaked it in sour wine, and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the rest of them said,
Let him be. Let us see whether Elijah comes to save him.
Again Jesus called out with a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. And look, the curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two, from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the holy ones who had fallen asleep were raised up. And people coming out from among the tombs after his being raised up entered into the holy city, and they became visible to many people. But when the army officer and those with him keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and the things happening, they grew very much afraid and said,
Certainly, this was God's Son.
And many women were there watching from a distance, who had accompanied Jesus from Galilee to minister to him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Now as it was late in the afternoon, a rich man of Arimathea came, named Joseph, who had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man approached Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it up in clean, fine linen, and laid it in his new tomb, which he had quarried in the rock. And after rolling a big stone to the entrance of the tomb, he left. But Mary Magdalene and the other Mary continued there, sitting before the grave.
Immediately at dawn, the chief priests with the elders and the scribes, indeed the whole Sanhedrin, consulted together, and they bound Jesus, and led him off and handed him over to Pilate. So Pilate put the question to him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
In answer he said,
You yourself say it.
But the chief priests were accusing him of many things. Now Pilate began questioning him again, saying,
Have you no reply to make? See how many charges they are bringing against you.
But Jesus made no further answer, so that Pilate was amazed. Well, from festival to festival, he used to release to them one prisoner whom they requested. At the time, the man named Barabbas was in prison with the seditionists, who in their sedition had committed murder. So the crowd came up and began to make their request, according to what Pilate used to do for them. He responded to them, saying,
Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?
For Pilate was aware that out of envy, the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas to them instead. Again in reply, Pilate said to them,
What then should I do with the one you call the king of the Jews?
Once more they cried out,
To the stake with him!
But Pilate went on to say to them,
Why? What bad thing did he do?
Still they cried out all the more,
To the stake with him!
At that Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them. And after having Jesus whipped, he handed him over to be executed on the stake. The soldiers now led him off into the courtyard, that is, into the governor's residence, and they called the whole body of troops together. And they dressed him in purple, and braided a crown of thorns, and put it on him. And they began to call out to him,
Greetings, you king of the Jews.
Also, they were hitting him on the head with a reed and spitting on him. And they got on their knees and bowed down to him. Finally, after they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple and put his outer garments on him. And they led him out to nail him to the stake. Also, they compelled into service a passer-by, a certain Simon of Cyrene, coming from the countryside, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his torture stake. So they brought him to the place called Golgotha, which means, when translated, skull place. Here they tried to give him wine drugged with myrrh, but he would not take it. And they nailed him to the stake, and distributed his outer garments by casting lots over them to decide who would take what. It was now the 3rd hour, and they nailed him to the stake. And the inscription of the charge against him was written, The King of the Jews. Moreover, they put 2 robbers on stakes alongside him, one on his right and one on his left. And those passing by spoke abusively to him, shaking their heads and saying,
Ha! You who would throw down the temple and build it in 3 days. Save yourself by coming down off the torture stake.
In the same way also, the chief priests with the scribes were mocking him among themselves, saying,
Others he saved, himself he cannot save.
Let the Christ, the King of Israel, now come down off the torture stake, so that we may see and believe.
Even those who were on stakes alongside him were reproaching him. When it became the 6th hour, a darkness fell over all the land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Jesus called out with a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani,
which means, when translated,
my God, why have you forsaken me?
And some of those standing near, on hearing it, began to say,
See, he is calling Elijah.
Then someone ran, soaked a sponge in sour wine, put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink, saying,
Let him be. Let us see whether Elijah comes to take him down.
But Jesus let out a loud cry and expired. And the curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two, from top to bottom. Now when the army officer who was standing by with him in view saw that he had expired under these circumstances, he said,
Certainly, this man was God's son.
There were also women watching from a distance, among them Mary Magdalene, as well as Mary, the mother of James the Less and of Joseph, and Salome, who used to accompany him and minister to him when he was in Galilee, and many other women who had come up together with him to Jerusalem. Now as it was already late in the afternoon, and since it was preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, there came Joseph of Arimathea, a reputable member of the council, who also himself was waiting for the kingdom of God. He took courage and went in before Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. But Pilate wondered whether he could already be dead, and summoning the army officer, he asked him whether Jesus had already died. So after making certain from the army officer, he granted the body to Joseph. After he bought fine linen and took him down, he wrapped him in the fine linen and laid him in a tomb that was quarried out of rock. Then he rolled a stone up to the entrance of the tomb. But Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph continued looking at where he had been laid.
And when it became day, the assembly of elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, gathered together. And they led him into their Sanhedrin hall, and said,
If you are the Christ, tell us.
But he said to them,
Even if I told you, you would not believe it at all. Moreover, if I questioned you, you would not answer. However, from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the powerful right hand of God.
At this they all said,
Are you therefore the Son of God?
He said to them,
You yourselves are saying that I am.
They said,
Why do we need further testimony? For we ourselves have heard it out of his own mouth.
So the multitude got up, one and all, and led him to Pilate. Then they began to accuse him, saying,
We found this man subverting our nation, forbidding the paying of taxes to Caesar, and saying he himself is Christ, a king.
Now Pilate asked him the question,
Are you the king of the Jews?
In answer he said,
You yourself are saying it.
Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds,
I find no crime in this man.
But they insisted, saying,
He stirs up the people by teaching throughout all Judea, starting from Galilee even to here.
On hearing that, Pilate asked whether the man was a Galilean. After ascertaining that he was under the jurisdiction of Herod, he sent him on to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem in those days. When Herod saw Jesus, he rejoiced greatly. For a considerable time he had been wanting to see Jesus because he had heard much about him, and he was hoping to see some sign performed by him. So he began to question him at length, but he gave him no answer. However, the chief priests and the scribes kept standing up and vehemently accusing him. Then Herod, together with his soldiers, treated him with contempt, and he mocked him by clothing him with a splendid garment, and then sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate became friends with each other on that very day, for before that they had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them,
"You brought this man to me as one inciting the people to revolt. Now look, I examined him in front of you, but found in this man no grounds for the charges you are bringing against him. In fact, neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. And look, he has done nothing deserving of death. I will therefore punish him and release him."
But the whole crowd shouted out,
"Do away with this man and release Barabbas to us."
This man had been thrown into prison for sedition that had occurred in the city, and for murder. Again Pilate called out to them because he wanted to release Jesus. Then they began to yell, saying,
"To the stake with him!
To the stake with him!"
The third time he said to them,
"Why? What bad thing did this man do? I found in him nothing deserving of death. I will therefore punish him and release him."
At this they became insistent, demanding with loud voices that he be executed, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate made the decision that their demand be met. He released the man whom they were demanding, who had been thrown into prison for sedition and murder, but he surrendered Jesus to their will. Now as they led him away, they seized a certain Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the countryside, and they placed the torture stake on him to carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people were following him, including women who kept beating themselves in grief and wailing for him. Jesus turned to the women and said,
"Daughters of Jerusalem, stop weeping for me. Weep instead for yourselves and for your children. For look, days are coming when people will say, 'Happy are the barren women, the wombs that did not give birth, and the breasts that did not nurse.' Then they will start saying to the mountains, 'Fall over us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us over.' If they do these things when the tree is moist, what will occur when it is withered?"
2 other men, criminals, were also being led off to be executed with him. And when they got to the place called Skull, they nailed him to the stake, there alongside the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. But Jesus was saying,
"Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing."
Furthermore, they cast lots to distribute his garments, and the people stood looking on, but the rulers were sneering and saying,
"Others he saved. Let him save himself if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one."
Even the soldiers mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying,
"If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself."
There was also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." Then one of the criminals hanging there began to speak abusively to him, saying,
"You are the Christ, are you not? Save yourself, and us too."
In response, the other rebuked him, saying,
Do you not fear God at all, now that you have received the same judgment? And we rightly so, for we are getting back what we deserve for the things we did. But this man did nothing wrong.
Then he said,
Jesus, remember me when you get into your kingdom.
And he said to him,
Truly I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise.
Well, by now it was about the 6th hour, and yet a darkness fell over all the land until the 9th hour, because the sunlight failed. Then the curtain of the sanctuary was torn down the middle, and Jesus called out with a loud voice and said,
Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit.
After he said this, he expired. Because of seeing what occurred, the army officer began to glorify God, saying,
Truly, this man was righteous.
And when all the crowds that were gathered together there for this spectacle saw the things that occurred, they returned home, beating their chests. And all those acquainted with him were standing at a distance. Also, women who had accompanied him from Galilee were there and saw these things. And look, there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council, who was a good and righteous man. This man had not voted in support of their scheme and action. He was from Arimathea, a city of the Judeans, and was waiting for the kingdom of God. This man went in before Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And he took it down and wrapped it up in fine linen, and he laid it in a tomb carved in the rock, where no man had yet lain. Now it was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was about to begin. But the women who had come with him from Galilee followed along, and took a look at the tomb, and saw how his body was laid. And they went back to prepare spices and perfumed oils. But, of course, they rested on the Sabbath, according to the commandment.
Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the governor's residence. It was now early in the morning. But they themselves did not enter into the governor's residence, so that they would not get defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate came outside to them and said,
What accusation do you bring against this man?
They answered him,
If this man were not a wrongdoer, we would not have handed him over to you.
So Pilate said to them,
Take him yourselves, and judge him according to your law.
The Jews said to him,
It is not lawful for us to kill anyone.
This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to indicate what sort of death he was about to die. So Pilate entered the governor's residence again, and called Jesus and said to him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
Jesus answered,
Are you asking this of your own originality, or did others tell you about me?
Pilate replied,
I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What did you do?
Jesus answered,
My kingdom is no part of this world. If my kingdom were part of this world, my attendants would have fought that I should not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from this source.
So Pilate said to him,
Well then, are you a king?
Jesus answered,
You yourself are saying that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is on the side of the truth listens to my voice.
Pilate said to him,
What is truth?
After saying this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them,
I find no fault in him. Moreover, you have a custom that I should release a man to you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews?"
Again they shouted.
"Not this man, but Barabbas."
Now Barabbas was a robber. Pilate then took Jesus and scourged him, and the soldiers braided a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and clothed him with a purple robe. And they kept coming up to him and saying,
"Greetings, you King of the Jews."
They also kept slapping him in the face. Pilate went outside again and said to them,
"See, I bring him outside to you in order for you to know that I find no fault in him."
So Jesus came outside, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to them,
"Look, the man."
However, when the chief priests and the officers saw him, they shouted,
"To the stake with him!"
"To the stake with him!"
Pilate said to them,
"Take him yourselves and execute him, for I do not find any fault in him."
The Jews answered him,
"We have a law, and according to the law, he ought to die, because he made himself God's son."
When Pilate heard what they were saying, he became even more fearful, and he entered the governor's residence again and said to Jesus,
"Where are you from?"
But Jesus gave him no answer. So Pilate said to him,
"Are you refusing to speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you, and I have authority to execute you?"
Jesus answered him,
"You would have no authority over me at all, unless it had been granted to you from above. This is why the man who handed me over to you has greater sin."
For this reason, Pilate kept trying to find a way to release him. But the Jews shouted,
"If you release this man, you are not a friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself a king speaks against Caesar."
Then Pilate, after hearing these words, brought Jesus outside, and he sat down on a judgment seat in a place called the Stone Pavement, but in Hebrew, Golgotha. Now it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews,
"See, your king."
However, they shouted,
"Take him away! Take him away! To the stake with him!"
Pilate said to them,
"Shall I execute your king?"
The chief priests answered,
"We have no king but Caesar."
Then he handed him over to them to be executed on the stake. So they took charge of Jesus. Bearing the torture stake for himself, he went out to the so-called skull place, which is called Golgotha in Hebrew. There they nailed him to the stake alongside 2 other men, one on each side, with Jesus in the middle. Pilate also wrote a title and put it on the torture stake. It was written, "Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this title, because the place where Jesus was nailed to the stake was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. However, the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate,
"Do not write the King of the Jews, but that he said, 'I am King of the Jews.'"
Pilate answered,
"What I have written, I have written."
Now when the soldiers had nailed Jesus to the stake, they took his outer garments and divided them into 4 parts, one for each soldier. And they also took the inner garment. But the inner garment was without a seam, being woven from top to bottom. So they said to one another,
"Let us not tear it, but let us cast lots over it, to decide whose it will be."
This was to fulfill the Scripture. They divided my garments among themselves, and they cast lots for my clothing. So the soldiers actually did these things. By the torture stake of Jesus, however, there were standing his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. So when Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother,
"Woman, see, your son."
Next he said to the disciple,
"See, your mother."
And from that hour on, the disciple took her into his own home. After this, when Jesus knew that by now all things had been accomplished, in order to fulfill the Scripture, he said,
"I am thirsty."
A jar was sitting there full of sour wine. So they put a sponge full of the sour wine on a hyssop stalk, and held it up to his mouth. When he had received the sour wine, Jesus said,
"It has been accomplished."
And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. Since it was the day of preparation, so that the bodies would not remain on the torture stakes on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath day was a great one, the Jews asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken away. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first man and those of the other man who was on a stake alongside him. But on coming to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, so they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers jabbed his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water came out. And the one who has seen it has given this witness, and his witness is true. And he knows that what he says is true, so that you also may believe. In fact, these things took place for the Scripture to be fulfilled. Not a bone of his will be broken. And again, a different Scripture says, "They will look to the one whom they pierced." Now after these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, but a secret one because of his fear of the Jews, asked Pilate if he could take away the body of Jesus, and Pilate gave him permission. So he came and took the body away. Nicodemus, the man who had come to him in the night the first time, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes weighing about 100 pounds. So they took the body of Jesus and wrapped it in linen cloths with the spices, according to the burial custom of the Jews. Incidentally, there was a garden at the place where he was executed, and in the garden was a new tomb in which no one had ever yet been laid. Because it was the day of preparation of the Jews, and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.
If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, leave your comments below and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. God bless.